The bullet hit the side mirror before she even saw the car. Glass exploded across the door panel. The crack was sharp, surgical. The kind of sound that rewires your nervous system before your brain has time to catch up. Marceline Varelli yanked the wheel left on pure instinct, tires screaming against wet asphalt, and the second shot punched through the rear window exactly where her headrest had been half a second before. 3 black SUVs, no plates, headlights off. They were already moving in formation, spreading wide, cutting the angle, the way trained people do when they have rehearsed this specific outcome many times before. The man in her passenger seat said nothing. He pressed one hand flat against the door panel to brace himself and watched her with the focused, unblinking attention of someone recalculating everything they thought they knew. He was bleeding through his shirt left side. Below the ribs and the blood was the dark, arterial kind that meant it had been going on for a while. His jaw was set. His breathing was controlled. Whatever he was feeling, he had locked it behind something thick and practiced, and it wasn't coming out. She did not ask if he was okay. She took the next left without slowing, dropped into the access lane that ran behind the rail yard, and killed her headlights. Hi viewers, have you ever had a split second where you had to decide whether to trust a complete stranger with your life? Drop your answer in the comments right now, I need to know. The SUVs overshot the turn. She heard the brake squeal, the engine pitch dropping as they tried to reverse course, and she had maybe 40 seconds before they reoriented. She used 30 of them to get through the gap in the rail yard fence, the one she knew about because a passenger had shown it to her 8 months ago, a man whose name she never learned and whose business she had decided not to ask about. The other 10 seconds she used to look at him. Really look. He was watching her the way you watch something that doesn't fit any category you already have. Not with fear, not with gratitude, with the slow, careful attention of a man who has met many people in many extreme situations and has just encountered the first one that genuinely surprised him. "You've done this before," he said. "No," she said. "Then what just happened?" "I drive for a living," she said. "I know every road in this district. That's different from training." She pulled forward through the yard, keeping the lights off, navigating by memory and the faint orange glow of the city above them. The SUVs were behind them now. She could see the headlights sweeping the street they'd left, moving in the wrong direction. She exhaled. Once. Then she pulled onto Ashland and turned the headlights back on and merged into the sparse 2 a.m. traffic like nothing had happened. He was still watching her. "Your name," he said. She kept her eyes on the road. "You owe me for the fare first." Something moved across his face. She caught it at the edge of her vision, not amusement. Not quite. The expression of a man who hasn't been spoken to that way in a very long time, and isn't sure whether to be offended or interested. He reached into his jacket. The interior pocket was deep and structured in a way that had nothing to do with a wallet. He pulled out cash anyway, counted it without looking, holding it out toward her. She took it, counted it herself. "This is 300. "Hazard," he said. She put it in the center console. "Marceline," she said. He was quiet for a moment, long enough that she thought he wasn't going to answer. "Zero," he said. The name landed flat, offered without decoration, without context. Just a word, just a name. The kind a man gives when he has stopped bothering to explain what it means. She drove another 4 blocks before she pulled into the parking structure on Wacker 3rd level, east corner, the blind spot she had logged away mentally the first time she drove in there, and noticed the camera positioning. She stopped the car, turned off the engine, and turned to look at him fully for the first time. He was younger than the blood and the stillness made him seem. Mid-30s, maybe. Dark features, sharp jaw, the kind of face that had been handsome before it learned to be careful. A tattoo above the open collar of his shirt, black ink, something geometric, partially visible. His left hand was pressed to his side, and the pressure wasn't working anymore. She reached into the back seat. He said, "You don't have to." "You're losing blood on my seat," she said. "That's a cleaning fee on top of the hazard. Let me see it." He moved his hand. She worked quickly, and without ceremony, the way you work when you've cleaned wounds before, and learned that hesitation makes it worse. Her hands were steady. She noted that about herself the same way she noted road conditions clinically, without pride or surprise. "My son," he said. She stopped. "He asks questions," Ciro said. "About everything. He's 8. His name is Tavian." She looked at him. "He drew me a picture last week," he said. "A house. No doors." His jaw tightened for just a half second. I didn't know what to say to him. She said nothing. She tied off the bandage. He looked down at it, then back at her. "I need someone who can drive," he said. "When things get like tonight. Someone who thinks instead of breaks." "I drive for Uber," she said. "I'll pay 4 times your nightly average. I don't trust men who solve problems with guns." He was quiet for a moment. "I know," he said. She blinked. "That's why I'm asking you," he said. "Everyone else already does." She didn't answer. She turned back to face the windshield, and in the cracked surface of what was left of her side mirror, she caught a reflection, a shape, dark and still, on the street below the parking structure. Someone standing, not moving, just watching the entrance she had pulled into 7 minutes ago. She said nothing about it, but her hands, resting in her lap, went very still. She demanded the money before she opened the door. Not because she was afraid of him. She had already established, in the parking structure, that fear was not the primary thing she felt around Ciro, but because the moment she stepped out of that car without terms, she would be operating in his world by his rules, and she had spent 29 years learning what happened to women who let powerful men set the terms first. So she named her number. He paid it. Cash. No hesitation. The way men pay when the amount is irrelevant, and the compliance is what matters. What he didn't expect was the follow-up. "Receipt," she said. He looked at her. "For the fare," she said. "I log everything." Something shifted in his face again, that same unclassifiable expression, the one she kept catching and couldn't name. He said nothing. She pulled out her phone, generated the receipt through the app the way she did for every passenger, and sent it to the number he gave her. She watched him look at his phone when it arrived. She watched him look back at her, and she thought, this man has not been handled in a very long time. The safe house was on the northwest side, on a street that looked like any other street, 2 flats, chain-link fences, a corner store with bars on the windows that had been there since before anyone currently alive could remember. The address was in his phone. He gave her directions in short, flat increments, the way someone gives directions when they're used to people who don't need explanation. She noted the route, filed it. Inside, the apartment was sparse and clean, in the way that spaces used for function rather than living are always sparse and clean. A table, chairs, a window with the blinds adjusted to a precise angle. 2 men stood when they entered, large men, careful men, the kind whose job was to be present without being seen, and they looked at Marceline with the flat, measuring look of people running an assessment. She looked back. Neither of them moved her. Ciro said something brief in Italian. They left the room. He sat down. For the first time since the parking structure, some of the controlled stillness in him shifted, not collapsed, not abandoned, just adjusted, the way a building settles after a tremor. He was in pain. He was not going to say so. "You should sleep," she said. "I don't sleep well in unfamiliar places." "Then you should sit quietly and not use that arm," she said. He looked at her for a long moment. "You're not afraid of me," he said. "I noticed." "Why?" She considered the question. Not performing consideration, actually thinking about it. The way she thought about everything, with a particular plainness that had nothing to do with bravado. "Because afraid doesn't help me," she said. "And you're not threatening me right now. When you do, I'll adjust." A silence. Then, very quietly, so quietly it almost wasn't a statement at all. "My sister died in a car, years ago. Someone ran them off the expressway." He paused. "A black sedan. I've hated that stretch of road since." She said nothing. She did not perform sympathy. She simply received the information and held it the way you hold something fragile carefully, without squeezing. He looked at the table. "Tavian asks me sometimes why I never drive," he said. "I told him I prefer to be driven," he said. A short pause, a shift in his jaw. He said, "Is it because you're sad about it?" He stopped. Marceline looked at her hands. Outside, a car passed. Its headlights swept across the ceiling in a brief, pale arc. "My brother took the fall for something he didn't do," she said. She didn't look up. "He's been inside for 4 years. I've been trying to fix it for 3. She wasn't asking for anything. She wasn't building toward a point. She was simply putting it in the room the same way he had, flat, factual, stripped of the performance of pain. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of 2 people who have both learned that certain words cost something and have decided to spend them anyway. Then she stood. "I'll take the fare for tonight," she said. "After that, I'm not your driver." He looked up at her. "You said that already," he said. "I'm saying it again," she said. "So we're clear." She moved toward the door. "There's a man named Lucien Mares," Ciro said. She stopped. Her back was still to him. "He was the architect of tonight," he said. "He will not stop at 1 attempt." A pause. "And he already has your plates." She stood in the doorway for 3 full seconds. Then she walked out. She drove home in silence, her hands steady on the wheel, her mind moving through the information the way it moved through a difficult route efficiently, without panic, mapping exits. She was almost to her block when she saw it. A dark car, parked 2 units past her building. Engine off, lights off, someone in the driver's seat. She drove past without slowing, went around the block, and came back the long way. The car was gone, but the space where it had been felt like a held breath, like something that wasn't finished, like a door left open by someone who fully intended to come back through it. The call came in at 6:14 a.m., and Ciro was already awake. He had been awake since 4, which was not unusual. Sleep, for him, had always been the thing that happened between problems, brief, functional, stripped of anything that resembled rest. He sat at the table in the safe house, with his phone face down and his coffee going cold, and listened to the man across from him deliver information in the specific, careful tone that meant the information was bad. 3 territories had been moved on overnight. Not Ciro's territories, not directly. The properties belonged to men who worked adjacent to his operation. Men who operated in the understood spaces of mutual benefit that kept a certain kind of peace intact in the Northwest Corridor. Quiet men, careful men, men who had maintained the same arrangements for over a decade without incident. They were gone now, moved out of their buildings. Assets frozen, contacts unreachable. The method was not violence. It was paperwork, legal filings, property transfers, the kind of hostile acquisition that happened fast and silent and left no body to find. The kind that required access to city officials, zoning boards, permit channels that normal people couldn't touch. Lucien. Ciro stood at the window. The city was starting its morning garbage trucks, early commuters, a woman walking a dog that had no interest in walking. The ordinary machinery of a Tuesday, moving forward without any knowledge of the things happening inside it. He thought about the man in the car last night, the one parked near Marceline's building. He made a call. 3 sentences. Specific instructions. Delivered in the tone he used when he meant every syllable. He hung up. His second phone buzzed. A text from a number he didn't recognize, which meant it was from someone using a relay a layer of distance, the digital equivalent of a gloved hand. She accepted 3 more fares this morning. 2-star rating on the last one. Busy woman. His jaw tightened. He put the phone down. Across the city, in a neighborhood that operated at its own speed and by its own logic, Marceline was doing exactly what the text said. She had been on the road since 5:30. The Tavian pickup from his school program wasn't until 4. The pharmacy run was at noon. Between those 2 fixed points, she filled every hour the same way she had filled every hour for 6 years practically, without ceremony, moving through the day like it owed her something she intended to collect. She did not think about the car outside her building. She thought about it constantly. A fare took her to Logan Square. She dropped the passenger, accepted another, drove it east. The city moved around her in its familiar geometry. The expressway overpasses, the river bridges, the specific rhythm of lights on Michigan Avenue at 7 a.m. She knew this city the way musicians know a piece they've played 1,000 times, not by thinking, but by something deeper than thinking. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She let it ring. It rang again. She pulled over. She answered, "Miss Varelli." The voice was smooth, measured. The voice of someone who had rehearsed being calm so many times it had become a permanent condition. "I want you to know you're not in danger. Not right now. I simply want to have a conversation." Her hand tightened on the phone. "Lucien Marez," she said. A pause, short, controlled. "So he told you about me," Lucien said. "That's interesting. He doesn't usually share." "What do you want?" "What everyone wants," he said. "To know what they're dealing with." "You're an unknown variable, Miss Varelli. I don't like variables." She said nothing. "You drove him out of an ambush I spent 11 days planning," he said. "I want to understand whether that was coincidence or something else." "It was a $240 fare," she said. Another pause. Longer this time. "I almost believe you," he said. "I don't need you to believe me." "No," he said. "You just need to understand what it means to be attached to Ciro Valente when his world starts contracting." A brief silence. "Which it is. As of this morning." The line went dead. She sat in the parked car for 45 seconds. Then she pulled back into traffic. She did not call Ciro. She finished her shift. She picked up Tavian at 4. He got into the back seat and said, "You look like you're thinking about something heavy." And she looked at him in the rearview mirror and said, "I'm always thinking about something heavy." And he said, "Me too," and opened his sketchbook and began to draw. She watched the road. She did not watch the silver car that picked up her trail at the second light and maintained exactly 3 vehicles of distance for the next 4 miles. But her eyes moved to the mirror more than they usually did. And at the 6th light, the one where she would normally go straight, she turned left. The silver car turned left. She turned right at the next block. The silver car turned right. She drove Tavian home via a route that added 11 minutes and took them through 3 neighborhoods they had no reason to pass through. When she got inside, she locked the deadbolt and stood with her back against the door. Tavian looked up from the kitchen table. "Why did we go the long way?" She looked at him. "Traffic," she said. He looked at her for a moment with those clear, direct eyes that didn't miss anything. Then he went back to his drawing. That night, she found her name on a list. She wasn't supposed to find it. It was buried in documents she only accessed, because a contact she trusted passed them along, wrapped inside something that looked like a routine message. But it was there. Her name, her plates, her address. On a document that had Lucien Marez's organizational header at the top, and next to her name, in a column labeled status, a single word, active. She noticed the man at 8:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, 2.5 weeks after the warehouse. He was bad at it. Not obvious bad, not the kind of obvious that only exists in movies where the person following you wears a trench coat and makes eye contact. Bad in the specific, practical way of someone who had been trained for surveillance on stationary targets and had not fully adjusted to the problem of following someone who moved constantly, unpredictably, and knew every shortcut in a 4-mile radius. She spotted him first at the pharmacy lingering at the greeting card rack with no card in his hand, facing the wrong direction for someone genuinely shopping. She spotted him again at the corner of Kedzie, 30 feet back, the same navy jacket, the same stillness inside his movement. She didn't run. She finished at the pharmacy. She came out, turned south, and walked with deliberate purpose toward the CVS 2 blocks down. She went through the front, straight to the back, out the emergency exit into the alley. He was faster than she had calculated. He had the alley covered a second man, positioned at the far end, which meant they had been running 2-person coverage, and she had only clocked one of them. The first man came through the exit 10 seconds behind her. She had the length of the alley and 2 bad options. She took neither. She went up the dumpster against the left wall, the ladder above it, 3 rungs of it before the man behind her had her arm. His grip was professional, heavy, not angry functional, the grip of someone completing a task. She drove her elbow back the way her brother Demarion had taught her in a kitchen in their mother's apartment when she was 15, and the world outside was what it was. She connected with something solid. The grip loosened by 30%. It was enough. She pulled free. She ran. Not toward the street, toward the second alley junction. Left, then right, then out onto Fullerton, where there were enough people that the calculus changed. The second man didn't follow her past the junction. The first man, nursing whatever she had hit, didn't follow her at all. She walked the last 3 blocks. Her hands started shaking at the second block. Not from fear. From the adrenaline unwinding, the body releasing what it had held in compression during the 40 seconds, when it understood that the outcome was not guaranteed. She sat on the curb. She was still sitting there when the black car pulled up. Ciro got out before it had fully stopped. He crossed to her without running. He didn't run. She would learn. Not because he was slow, but because running communicated panic, and panic was a resource he refused to spend. And he sat down on the curb next to her. He looked at her hands. She looked at the street. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small flat pack, the kind that came in those drugstore emergency kits, gauze and antiseptic in a plastic envelope, and held it toward her. She had a scrape across her left palm from the ladder. She hadn't noticed it until now. She took the pack. She cleaned her palm. He watched. "I should have told you sooner," he said. She said nothing. "I thought the distance between you and my operation would—" "That's the problem," she said. "You thought instead of told." She pressed the gauze to her palm. "2 men," she said. 2-person coverage. That's not improvised, that's planned. How long?" "I don't know." She looked at him. "Guess. Possibly since the night I came to you." She absorbed this. "So the whole time you were letting me drive around thinking I had a normal problem," she said. "I had a surveillance team. I had people on you," he said, "watching." "Not close enough," she said. "No," he said. "Not close enough." A bus passed. A man with a cart of groceries moved past them on the sidewalk without looking down. The city continued its ordinary motion, indifferent and total. She turned to look at him. He was already looking at her, not with the controlled, measuring attention from the first night, with something quieter than that. Something that didn't have the same armor on. "I didn't save you for this," she said. It came out flat, not cruel. Just true, the way things are true when you strip the performance away from them and leave only what actually happened. She watched it land. She watched something move behind his face, not guilt, not quite, but something older than guilt. Something that had been waiting in a locked room for someone to say exactly those words. "No," he said. "You didn't." She stood up. She brushed off her jeans. She looked down at him. Still sitting on the curb, this man who owned buildings and moved money through 6 states and made people disappear, sitting on a public curb with his hands on his knees, looking up at her, and she felt the full weight of the contradiction of him. "I need to get Tavian," she said. "I'll have someone take you." "I'll drive myself," she said. She took 3 steps. "Marceline." She stopped. "He won't stop at surveillance," Ciro said. "Lucien. What he does next, it won't be men in a parking lot." She stood with her back to him. "What will it be?" A pause. "Something you can't elbow your way out of," he said. She walked to her car. She drove to Tavian's school. She was early, the program didn't end for another hour. So she sat in the parking lot and watched the entrance and let her mind run through the map of everything she knew, everything she'd been told, and everything she hadn't been told yet. Tavian came out at 4 on the dot, backpack bouncing, already talking to the boy beside him about something that required significant hand gestures to explain. He saw her. He waved big. She waved back. And she thought, if anything ever happened to him because of a decision she made, there would be no version of herself on the other side of that she could live in. That night, after Tavian was asleep, her phone buzzed. An image. No text attached. She opened it. A screenshot. Surveillance footage timestamp. Today, 4:02 p.m. The parking lot of Tavian's school. A man she didn't recognize standing near the front entrance, watching the kids come out. Her heart did something cold and specific in her chest. She stared at the image for a long time. Then she typed back to the number it came from. Who sent this? The response came in 4 seconds. Someone who wants you to understand what the next move is. Tavian decided he liked Ciro on a Wednesday, and he made this decision with the absolute, uncomplicated certainty that 6-year-olds bring to conclusions that take adults years to reach. It happened over a grilled cheese. Marceline had brought Tavian to the safe house because she had no other option. Her neighbor Audra was at a doctor's appointment. The school program was closed for a staff day, and the alternative was leaving him alone in an apartment she no longer fully trusted, was being watched by the right people. She had not told Ciro she was bringing him. Ciro opened the door, looked at Tavian, looked at Marceline, said nothing. They went inside. Tavian walked straight to the kitchen table, set his backpack down, and pulled out his sketchbook. He examined the table surface. He examined the light coming through the window. He turned to Ciro. Do you have better pencils than these? He held up a stubby yellow one. Mine is almost a stub. Ciro looked at the pencil. He opened a drawer, the kind of drawer that contained miscellaneous practical objects accumulated without intention, and found, after a moment, a full set of mechanical pencils, still in the packaging. He set them on the table. Tavian looked at them, looked at Ciro. Did you buy these for someone? I don't remember, Ciro said. You can have them, Tavian said generously, and then opened the packaging and kept them. Marceline, watching from across the room, pressed her lips together. Ciro made grilled cheese. Not because anyone asked him to. He simply moved into the kitchen with the particular efficiency of someone who has decided to be useful. And 10 minutes later there were 2 plates on the table and a third set out without comment. Tavian ate and drew simultaneously, which was his standard operating procedure. At some point during the meal, he looked up at Ciro, who was standing at the window with his coffee, and said, Why do bad people always look calm? Marceline set her glass down. Ciro turned from the window. He looked at Tavian for a long moment, the same measuring look he gave everything, but warmer at the edges, or maybe not warmer, maybe just open in a way it usually wasn't. He pulled out a chair and sat down across from the boy. Because, he said, calm is the only thing they learn to control. Tavian chewed thoughtfully. Are you a bad person? I have been, Ciro said. I'm working on the other thing. Tavian nodded. This apparently satisfied the inquiry. He went back to his drawing. Ciro looked at the sketchbook without commenting. Then he looked at Marceline. She gave him nothing, kept her face neutral, practical, but something in her chest had loosened by 3 degrees, and she was not going to say so. After Tavian finished eating, he slid the sketchbook across the table toward Ciro. Tell me what you think this is, he said. Ciro looked at the drawing. It was a house complex, multi-level, rendered in the detailed, obsessive way that Tavian drew everything. Windows with individual panes, a chimney, trees on both sides. No doors. A house, Ciro said. It's a safe place, Tavian corrected. A house is just a building. A safe place is different. Ciro looked at the drawing for a moment longer than he needed to. What makes it safe? Tavian considered this with full seriousness. Nobody can get in, he said. But also, he paused. The people inside chose to be there. He took the sketchbook back and kept drawing. Ciro stood up. He moved back to the window. Marceline watched him stand there, and she saw in the particular set of his shoulders, the way his hand was flat against the wall beside the window, instead of easy at his side, that something Tavian had said had landed somewhere it wasn't expected to land. She did not comment on it. She brought the plates to the sink. Later, while Tavian was absorbed in a new drawing, Ciro moved into the kitchen and stood near her without apparent purpose. She ran the water. She handed him a dish to dry without looking at him. He took it. They stood in the ordinary domesticity of a kitchen task for 40 seconds. My sister used to draw, he said. Quiet. Not looking at her. Not houses. Birds. She kept her eyes on the sink. She was 17, he said. The car went off the expressway in February. Ice on the bridge, they said. They said a lot of things. He paused. None of them explained why I still can't drive that stretch. She turned off the water. She handed him the last dish. He dried it. She said, "My brother Demarion taught me how to throw an elbow at 15. He was 22. He took the fall for something a man in our building did, because the man had a family, and Demarion said families mattered." She set a glass on the drying rack. "He's been inside 4 years. He never complained once." Ciro set the dish down. "And you've been carrying it since." "I've been fixing it since," she said. "Different thing." He looked at her. She looked back. And for a moment, in the ordinary fluorescence of a safe house kitchen, there was no empire, no surveillance list, no Lucian, no 2 a.m. fare, just two people who had both, in different ways, learned what it cost to be the one who stayed. Then Tavian called from the table, "Ciro, can you come look at this one?" Ciro moved toward the table. Marceline turned to the window. She stood very still, because outside, on the street below, a car had pulled up, and the man who got out was not looking at the building across the street. He was looking directly at the window she was standing in. Then he pulled out a phone, typed something, and got back in the car. Her own phone buzzed 2 seconds later. She looked at it. A text. Unknown number. Pick her, or lose everything. She read it twice. Then she looked at Tavian, sitting at the table, showing Ciro a drawing and explaining something about the windows with complete seriousness. And she understood, with a cold and total clarity, that the message was not sent to her. It was sent to Ciro, and someone wanted her to know that. She put the phone in her pocket. She said nothing, but the question sitting in her chest was simple and terrible. If he has to choose, what does a man like Ciro Valente choose? And underneath that, quieter, worse. What happens to Tavian if the answer is wrong? The school called at 3:47 p.m. Tavian had not been picked up. That was the sentence. Flat, administrative, delivered by a woman whose voice carried the practiced patience of someone accustomed to parents who ran late. Marceline was already in the car when she answered, already 2 miles from the school, already on time. She pressed the phone harder against her ear. "What do you mean he wasn't picked up?" "His emergency contact came at 3:15, the woman said. A woman. She had the release form. She had his full name, his classroom, his teacher's name. A pause. Everything checked out. Marceline ran the red light. She did not remember doing it. She remembered the school entrance. She remembered getting out of the car before it had fully stopped, the door swinging wide, her feet on the pavement moving fast toward the glass doors. She remembered the administrator's face when she came through the precise moment when the woman understood that whatever she had permitted to happen at 3:15 p.m. had been very wrong. Tavian was not in the building. She called Ciro. He answered before the first ring completed. She said 3 words. The line went quiet for exactly 2 seconds, not confused quiet, not disbelieving quiet, but the specific silence of a man whose entire internal system had just shifted from one operational mode to another. The silence before a decision. "Don't move," he said. "I'm coming to you." "Don't tell me not to move," she said. "Tell me where he is." Marceline. "Where is he?" Another silence, this one different. "I don't know yet," he said. She stood in the parking lot of the school with the afternoon sun on her face and her hands completely still at her sides, and she thought about Tavian drawing houses at the kitchen table. Houses with no doors. Safe places where the people inside chose to be there. She thought about a 6-year-old somewhere in this city who had chosen people and trusted them the way he trusted everything, completely, without armor. And she locked every feeling she had behind a wall so thick that nothing was getting through it until she had him back. Ciro arrived in 11 minutes. He came with 4 men she hadn't seen before. Not the usual 2 from the safe house. Different men, harder looking, moving with the compressed readiness of people who had been called off standby. He went straight to the administrator. He asked questions in a voice so controlled it was almost soft. He looked at the release form. He looked at the camera footage on the administrator's laptop, Marceline standing behind him, watching the screen, watching a woman she had never seen walk Tavian out to a car she had never seen. Tavian holding the woman's hand because Tavian trusted people, because that was who he was, because no one had ever given him a reason not to. The car was a gray sedan. No plates. It went north on Cicero and disappeared from the last available camera angle at 3:21 p.m. Ciro straightened up. He turned to his men. The instructions he gave were short and specific, and not in English. Then he turned to Marceline. She was already looking at him. "The warehouse," she said. "The original ambush. Lucian arranged it." "Yes. He's been building toward this since before I ever answered that fare." "Yes. He took Tavian," she said, "because he can't touch you through your operation anymore. You're too covered there." She watched his face. "But he can touch you through what you care about." Ciro said nothing. And in his silence she read the thing he had never said directly, the thing she had seen in the kitchen, in the parking structure, in the way he sat across from a 6-year-old and answered impossible questions with the first honest words she had ever heard him use. He cared about that boy. Whatever that meant for a man like him, whatever form it took, whatever it cost him to admit it, even to himself he cared. And Lucian knew. "How long has he been watching us?" she said. "Long enough," Ciro said. "How long?" He looked at her. "Since the second job," he said. "The second job, 6 weeks ago. When she had thought it was just a pickup. When she had told herself it was just the money. 6 weeks of footage. 6 weeks of her and Tavian in the safe house kitchen and the grilled cheese and the sketchbook on the table. 6 weeks of Lucienne Mares building a blueprint. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered it on speaker, her eyes on Ciro. "Miss Varelli." Lucien's voice filled the school parking lot like a cold front moving in. "The boy is fine. He had a snack. He's watching something on a tablet. He's perfectly comfortable." She said nothing. "I want to have a real conversation now," Lucien said. "Not a phone call, not a message. A meeting." "Where?" "I'll send the address." A pause. "Come alone." If Ciro is within 2 blocks of the building, the conversation ends. He hung up. The address arrived 30 seconds later. She showed the screen to Ciro. He looked at it. His expression did something she had only seen once before at the window in the safe house, when Tavian had said that a safe place was somewhere people chose to stay. It was the expression of a man confronting the distance between what he had built and what it had actually cost. "I'll send someone with you," he said. He said alone. "I know what he said. If you send someone and he sees them." "I know." His jaw was tight. "I know what's at stake." She looked at him. "Do you?" she said. Not cruel, not accusatory, just direct, the way she did everything. "That boy is—" He stopped. "Say it," she said. He looked at her for a long moment. "He's the first person in 4 years, Ciro said, who asked me a question because he actually wanted to know the answer. The parking lot was quiet around them. "Then let me go alone," she said. He said nothing for 3 seconds. "The address is on the south side," he said. "Building 7. There are 2 exits front, and the loading access on the east wall." He said it like he was reading it from a map he had memorized before she had even showed him the screen. "If you're not out in 40 minutes, I'm coming in regardless." She nodded. She walked to her car. She heard him say her name once more, quiet, behind her. She did not turn around. Because if she turned around and looked at him, she was going to see the thing in his face that she had been carefully not looking at for 6 weeks, and she did not have time for what seeing it would cost her. Not yet. Not until Tavian was home. She drove south, and in her rearview mirror, she watched Ciro standing in the school parking lot growing smaller. A man who controlled half a city standing completely still, because the one thing he could not fix was already in motion, and the only person positioned to fix it was driving away from him. She thought, this is what it looks like when a powerful man meets something his power cannot solve. She thought, I hope he figures out what to do with that feeling. Then she turned onto the expressway and did not look back again. Lucien Marez was not what she expected. She had built him from the evidence, the surveillance, the orchestrated ambush, the methodical 6-week architecture of a plan that used a 6-year-old as a closing argument. She had expected someone who wore his danger the way Ciro wore his, compressed, controlled, visible in the stillness. Lucien was relaxed. He sat at a folding table in the center of a room that had been a storage space and still smelled like it. Concrete floor, bare walls, 2 bulbs hanging from a wire strung across the ceiling. He had a cup of coffee. He gestured to the chair across from him like he was hosting a meeting in an office with a view. She sat. She did not look around for Tavian. She knew the look would give him something, and she was not giving him anything she didn't intend to. "You're calmer than I expected," Lucien said. "I'm focused," she said. "Different thing." He smiled. It was a real smile that was the thing that was wrong about it. Not performed, not threatening. Genuine, in the way that the smiles of people who have decided they are right about everything are always genuine. "I've been watching you for 6 weeks," he said. "You know that now." "I know." "Then you know I'm not reckless," he said. "Everything I do has a structure, a reason. I don't hurt people. I don't need to hurt." She looked at him. "You took a 6-year-old out of his school," she said. "I borrowed him," Lucien said, "for a conversation." He set his coffee down. "The boy is in the next room. He's fine. You can hear him if you listen. He's explaining something to one of my men about windows." She listened. Through the wall, faint but clear Tavian's voice, earnest and detailed, describing the difference between windows that let light in and windows that just look like they do. Something in her chest loosened by 1 degree. She kept her face level. "What do you want?" she said. "What I've always wanted," Lucien said. Ciro Valente removed from the board. "Not physically, I'm not a violent man by preference. Publicly, legally, completely." He leaned forward. "You have something I need," he said. "You've been inside his operation for 6 weeks. You've been in the safe house, the properties, the meetings. You know names, locations, financial channels." He paused. "I don't need all of it. I need enough to give to the right people in the right places." She said nothing. "In exchange," Lucien said, "the boy goes home tonight. You go home tonight. And the surveillance on your address ends permanently." He paused. "And I have resources to open the kind of legal channels that could significantly accelerate a wrongful conviction appeal. For someone who has been inside 4 years without cause." She went very still. "Demarian. He had done his homework." "Of course he had." "You're offering to help my brother," she said. "I'm offering to make 1 call," Lucien said. "1 call to 1 attorney who owes me a significant favor. Your brother could be out in 60 days. She looked at him. He looked back. And she understood, with complete clarity, what this moment actually was. It wasn't a negotiation. It was a mirror. He was showing her the exact price of Ciro, what it would cost her in real, concrete, human terms to stay loyal to a man she had known for 6 weeks, a man whose world had put her name on a surveillance list, a man who solved problems with guns, a man whose grief was real, and whose damage was also real, and whose empire had now reached into a school and taken the boy she was half-raising. 60 days. Demarian. Free. She thought about her brother's voice on the phone, the specific, deliberate cheerfulness he performed every Thursday, so she wouldn't hear how much he was tired. The way he said, "I'm good, Mark. I'm really good," in the tone of a man who has decided that lying about fine is an act of love. 4 years. She thought about Ciro's face in the school parking lot, the thing in it she had refused to look at directly. She thought about Tavian explaining windows through a wall. "How long do I have to decide?" she said. "Now," Lucien said. "The decision happens in this room." She looked at the table between them. "If I give you what you need," she said, "Ciro loses everything." "His operation, yes," Lucien said. "His freedom, possibly, depending on what gets found." "And if I don't?" Lucien picked up his coffee. "The boy comes home anyway," he said. "I told you I'm not reckless. But the surveillance continues. The pressure on you continues. And the appeal your brother has been waiting for continues to move at the speed of a system that has no particular reason to rush." He paused. "I'm a patient man, Miss Varelli. I can wait you out." She looked at the wall. Through it, Tavian's voice, still going something about the angle of light, the way it moved across a room in the morning differently than in the afternoon, the way shadows told you what time it was if you paid attention. She thought, this is the choice. Not abstract, not theoretical. Right here. This table. This room. She had 4 minutes of real thinking and she used all of them. Then she looked at Lucien. "I'll give you what you need," she said. Something shifted in Lucien's posture, the small, controlled release of a man whose plan has just moved from theory to execution. "I knew you'd make the right decision," he said. "I need something first," she said. "Name it." "I need to see Tavian," she said. "Right now, in this room. I need to see that he's okay with my own eyes before I give you anything." Lucien nodded. He stood, moved to the door, opened it. And Tavian walked in, backpack on, sketchbook under his arm, looking around the room with the composed curiosity of a child who had decided that fear was less interesting than observation. He saw Marceline. His face did the thing it always did, open, complete, the whole of him in it. She crossed the room in 3 steps and held him. He held on. He said, into her shoulder, "I knew you were coming." She said, "Always." She held on for 1 more second. Then she stood up. She looked at Lucien, and she began to talk. She gave him names, locations. She described meeting points, financial structures, the layout of the safe house. She spoke with the specific, credible detail of someone who had been paying attention, because she had, always. That was who she was, and she watched Lucien record it all on his phone, with the focused satisfaction of a man collecting exactly what he came for. She talked for 18 minutes. When she stopped, Lucien looked at her with what might have been respect. "That's everything?" he said. "That's everything," she said. He nodded. "Zero is finished," he said. "Yes," she said. She stood. She took Tavian's hand. She walked out of the building into the early evening air, Tavian beside her talking about the man inside who had not known anything about windows. She did not look at her phone. Not yet. Because in the 18 minutes she had been talking to Lucien, she had given him something real, something true, something that would hold up to scrutiny. And she had also given him something else, something he had not realized was there. Buried inside the information folded into the names and the locations and the financial descriptions, a thread, a very specific thread, that, if pulled by the right person in the right place, would not destroy Zero. It would destroy Lucien. She got Tavian into the car. She pulled out her phone. She made 1 call. It rang twice. A man answered, not Zero, a man whose name she had been given 3 weeks ago by a contact she had never expected to use, a contact she had logged away in the same mental file where she kept every exit and every access road and every piece of information she collected without knowing yet what it was for. "I need you to pull something for me," she said. "Tonight. I'll send you exactly where to look." She sent the thread. The man on the other end was quiet for a moment. Then, "Where did you get this?" "From a man who talked too much in a room he thought was clean," she said. She hung up. She looked at Tavian in the rearview mirror. He was drawing. "What are you drawing?" she said. He held it up without looking away from the page. A house. 4 doors. 1 on every wall. She turned back to the road, and she drove towards Zero. She told him to his face. That was the part people would never fully understand, not the plan, not the recordings, not the way it all came apart at the seams in the end. The part that mattered was that she looked at him directly and delivered every word without flinching. She told him she had betrayed him. She told him she had given Lucien names, locations, the layout of the safe house, the financial channels. She told him the night at the warehouse had been the worst decision of her life. She told him she regretted saving him. She said it in the safe house, in the room with the table and the 2 chairs, with his 2 men standing near the wall and the city moving outside the window like nothing in it had changed. She said it with her hands at her sides and her voice level and her eyes on his face the entire time. She watched him hear it. She had prepared herself for rage, for the cold, efficient, controlled anger she had seen him use like a tool in other situations, precise, targeted, designed to accomplish a specific outcome. She had prepared herself for the version of him that had built an empire on other people's fear. What she had not prepared herself for was the stillness. He went completely, totally still. Not the controlled stillness from before. Not the compressed readiness of a man who was deciding. The stillness of a man who had just taken a blow in a place that had no armor, a place he had not known, was exposed until exactly this moment. He believed her. That was the thing. He believed every word. And she understood, watching his face. Why? Because everything she said was technically true. She had given Lucien what he asked for. She had described the safe house. She had named the contacts. She had done exactly what Lucien needed her to do. She had just done it with a trap wired inside every sentence. But Ciro didn't know that. He stood across the table from her, and he believed he was looking at a woman who had chosen her brother over him, her freedom over him, the clean, ordinary life over the 6 weeks of something she had never named, but that had changed the temperature of every room she walked into. Since the warehouse, one of his men started to move toward her. Ciro raised one hand. The man stopped. Ciro looked at his own hand. He set it flat on the table. He looked at the table for a long time. "Your brother," he said. His voice was different. Not broken, that wasn't the right word. Reduced. The way a fire is reduced to coals, still heat, still real, but no flame anymore. "He offered you the appeal," Ciro said. "Yes." "And you took it." "Yes." He nodded once, very slowly. "I understand," he said. 3 words. Flat. Absolute. The words of a man closing a door from the inside. She kept her face level. She kept her breathing even. And she thought, I am standing in this room watching a man I have no clean word for absorb something I built to save him, and I cannot tell him, and that is the cost of this, and I am paying it. "Leave," he said, not to her, to his men. They left. The room was just the 2 of them. He did not look at her. He stood with his hand on the table, and his eyes somewhere past her left shoulder, and the silence between them was the loudest thing she had ever stood inside. "Tavian asked me last week," Ciro said, "why I never stayed anywhere long." He stopped. "I told him I hadn't found a reason to." She said nothing. He said, his voice stopped, restarted. He said, "Maybe the reason finds you." The silence came back. She stood in it. She thought, "Tell him. Just tell him. Tell him what the threat is, what you put inside the information, what is going to happen in the next 12 hours when the right person pulls the right piece and Lucien's entire structure collapses." She thought, if you tell him, and someone in this building is still reporting to Lucien, it falls apart before it lands. She thought, the cost of this plan is standing here while a man believes something that isn't true. She said nothing. She walked to the door. "Marceline." She stopped. His voice was different when he said her name this time, not a command, not even a question, just a word, her name in a voice that had most of its armor off. She stood with her back to him. "Was any of it real?" he said. 3 seconds. That was how long she gave herself. Then she walked out. She was 3 blocks away, Tavian asleep in the back seat, when her contact called. "It's moving," the man said. "The thread is moving. Your Lucien has 3 government officials in his pocket. 2 of them were the ones processing the original evidence in your brother's case." A pause. "The recordings you handed us have enough for federal warrants. They're pulling everything tonight." Her hands tightened on the wheel. "Tavian is safe?" the man said. "With me," she said. "Ciro Valente is clean," the man said. The information you gave Lucien is accurate but incomplete. Nothing in it implicates Zero in anything actionable. It just looks like it does." "I know," she said. "That was deliberate." "Yes." A pause. "That was a very precise thing to build in 18 minutes, the man said. She said nothing. She drove. Tavian shifted in the back seat, half asleep, his sketchbook still in his lap. Her phone buzzed. Text. Unknown number. New number. She opened it. An address. A building on the north side she had never been to. Beneath the address, one sentence. "Lucien is moving Tavian's original handler. She knows where the recordings are stored. If she gets out of the city tonight, the warrants die." Her stomach dropped. She pulled over. She looked at the address. She looked at Tavian in the mirror, fully asleep now, his mouth slightly open, his hand loosely holding a pencil. She looked back at the address. She thought about Demarian. She thought about Zero's voice saying, "Was any of it real?" She thought about a house with 4 doors, one on every wall, drawn by a boy who believed that the right people would choose to stay. She dialed the contact back. "I need one more thing," she said. "A beat." "Name it," the man said. She looked at Tavian. She named it. She pulled back into traffic. And then from 2 blocks behind her, from a direction she had not been watching, a single gunshot cut through the quiet of the street. Sharp, precise. The sound of something ending. She stopped the car. She sat completely still. Her heart was going very fast, and her hands were steady, and she did not know, could not know, not yet who was standing and who was not in the building 2 blocks behind her. She did not know if the shot had found Lucien. She did not know if it had found someone else. She did not know if the warrants were still moving or had been stopped. What she knew was this. Tavian was awake now, sitting up in the back seat, eyes wide, completely alert, the way children are when something has entered the world that wasn't there before. "Marceline," he said. "I'm here," she said. "What was that?" She looked at him in the mirror. She looked at the street behind them. She looked back at him. "I don't know yet," she said. It was the most honest thing she had said all night. And in the silence that followed, her phone lit up with a call from a number she had never seen before, that would, in the next 30 seconds, tell her exactly what had happened in that building, and change everything. Again. Lucien was alive. That was the first thing the call told her. The second thing it told her was that the shot had not been random. It had been a warning, fired into the wall of the building 2 feet from where Lucien was standing, when his handler tried to run with the recordings. The shot stopped her. The recordings did not leave the building. The warrants moved. By 11 p.m., 3 federal agents and a prosecutor Marceline had never heard of were in a building on the south side pulling files that Lucien Marez had spent 4 years accumulating. Files that tied together a network of officials, property acquisitions, and 2 wrongful convictions, one of which belonged to a man named Demarian Varelli, currently in year 4 of a sentence he should never have served. She sat in the parking lot of her building with Tavian asleep in the back seat, and she read the updates coming through her contacts' messages one by one. She did not feel relief. Not yet. Relief was for after. Relief was for when the thing was done, when the last piece had landed where it was supposed to land. Right now, she felt the specific, bone-level exhaustion of someone who had been holding an enormous amount of weight for a very long time and had just set it down, and the setting down, it turned out, had its own kind of hurt. She carried Tavian upstairs. He woke up halfway to the door, looked at her, said, "Are we home?" Said yes, went back to sleep before she had finished the sentence. She put him in his bed. She stood in the doorway for a moment. She went to the kitchen table. She sat down. She did not cry. She had learned, a long time ago, that certain moments were too large for crying, that some things sat outside the reach of tears, in a place that was just pure fact. Fact, Tavian was home. Fact, the recordings were secured. Fact, Demarian had a real chance now. 60 days, the man had said. 60 days, and the door opened. Fact. She had looked Ciro Valente in the face and let him believe something that wasn't true, and he had said, was any of it real? And she had walked out. She looked at the shelf above the table. The Uber receipt was still there, folded once. She looked at it for a long time. Her phone buzzed. Ciro. She stared at his name on the screen. It buzzed again. She did not answer. Not because she didn't want to. Because there was an order to things. A sequence that had to move forward before she could stand in any room with him and have the words come out right. The warrants had to complete. Demarian had to be formally notified. The thread had to finish pulling. She put the phone face down. She sat in the kitchen until the light outside changed. At 6 a.m., her contact called. The warrants executed overnight, he said. Lucien is in federal custody as of an hour ago. 4 officials taken in alongside him. A pause. 2 of them were the ones who processed your brother's original evidence. She closed her eyes. The public defender's office will be contacting your brother this morning, he said. His attorney is already moving. She said, thank you. She hung up. She sat with it. Just sat with it, in the quiet kitchen, in the early morning light, the city starting its ordinary Tuesday outside the window, the receipt on the shelf, Tavian's drawings on the wall, the whole collection of them, the houses that had evolved over months from sealed structures to buildings with more and more openings, more and more doors, more and more light getting in. At 8:15 a.m., she drove to the safe house. She knew there was a real chance he wouldn't be there. She knew there was a real chance he had moved, cleared out, the way people in his world moved when the ground shifted. She knew there was a real chance that the last thing she had said in that room, that silence, that walk to the door, had been the end of whatever this was. She pulled up outside. The black car was still there. She sat in her car for a moment. Then she got out. She went up. She knocked. No answer. She tried the handle. Unlocked. She pushed it open. The room was empty. Table, chairs, the window with the blinds at the precise angle, 2 cups on the counter, 1 used, 1 clean. And on the table, where the sketchbook had been that Wednesday, a single piece of paper. She crossed the room. She picked it up. It was not a note. Not words. It was a drawing. Done in mechanical pencil, the kind from the drawer, the ones Tavian had kept. A house. Simple, careful lines. The style was not Tavian's less fluid, more deliberate, the drawing of someone who did not draw often, but had taken their time. 4 doors. 1 on every wall. And in the bottom right corner, small and plain, C. She stood at the table with the drawing in her hands. She read it the way you read something that contains more than its words, or in this case, more than its lines. She read it as, I understood, eventually. I understood what you built, and why you didn't tell me, and what it cost you to stand there. She read it as, I know now. She read it as something she did not have a word for yet, but that sat in her chest like the specific weight of something given freely by someone who did not give things freely. She folded it once. She put it in her jacket pocket. She looked at the room one more time. Then she walked out. She drove home. She parked. She sat in the car. And somewhere across the city, in a direction she wasn't looking, a man who had built his entire life on knowing exactly where every exit was a man who had survived by moving before anyone could require him to stay, was standing outside her building. She didn't know that yet. But Tavian did, because Tavian had seen him from the window. And when she came through the door, Tavian looked up from the kitchen table with his sketchbook open and his pencil in his hand and said, completely calm, completely certain, he came back. He was gone by the time she got to the window. The street below was ordinary. A delivery truck, a woman walking, the corner store, with its lights already on. No black car, no stillness that didn't belong. She stood at the window for a long moment. How long ago? She said. Tavian looked up. Before you parked, he said. He stood there for a while. Then he left. She looked at the street. Did he see you? She said. I waved. Tavian said. He waved back. She turned from the window. She sat down at the kitchen table across from him. He was drawing. The sketchbook was open to a new page. He had started something. The lines still loose, still finding their shape. She could see the beginning of a roof line, a wall, the suggestion of a window. She did not ask what it was going to be. She already knew. Tavian, she said. He looked up. Your uncle is coming home, she said. Maybe 60 days, maybe less. He went very still the way he went still when something was real, not shocked, not performing surprise, just receiving it. Letting it be true in the full, careful way of a child who has learned that good things sometimes actually happen. Then he nodded. He went back to the drawing. She watched him for a moment. She pulled the folded paper from her jacket pocket and set it on the table between them. He looked at it. What is that? Someone left it for me, she said. He unfolded it. He looked at the drawing for a long time, the careful pencil lines, the 4 doors, the small C in the corner. He's not that good at drawing, Tavian said. No, she said. But he got the doors right, Tavian said. He folded it back. He pushed it toward her. She left it on the table between them. Outside, the city moved forward through its Tuesday, indifferent and alive, carrying everyone in it toward whatever was next. Deliveries and school runs and coffee going cold on counters. People making decisions in parking lots and kitchens and the front seats of cars. The small and enormous decisions that don't look like anything from the outside but determine everything. She thought about Demarian waking up this morning in a facility on the south side, not knowing yet that something had changed overnight. Not knowing that 60 days from now, maybe less, a door was going to open. She thought about the specific expression his face would make when someone told him. She had carried that future expression in her chest for 4 years like a photograph she hadn't taken yet. She thought about Ciro standing on her street, not knocking, just standing, like a man who had come all the way to the door and was still figuring out what came after that. She understood it, because she was doing the same thing from the other.